Welcome to the, whatever day this is, July 12th, council work session. I just want to give a little time note to everyone involved that we've extended this meeting to 2 hours in order to have time to do chronic nuisance codes. I'm going to sort of wave my hand and give everyone a time warning at about 1:15 that we're getting ready to wrap up so that we can move into the next item. So just a heads up for every
12:15?
12, no. We're going in, I'm sorry, you're right.
12:45.
12:45. Take two, 12:45. Thank you, that makes more sense. 12:45, we're going to 1:30, right. Got it. Okay, now we're ready.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll turn over to Jennifer, and she'll lead us through this conversation around potentially the next bond measure for our street repair program.
So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Jennifer Willer. I'm a principal civil engineer in the Public Works Engineering Division, and I was the primary liaison working with the Citizen Street Repair Review Panel over this last year, but that I've been involved in the bond measure projects almost from the beginning. We also have a few other staff here today that are going to be on hand to answer any questions about some specific elements. Mark Schoening, City Engineer, is here. Lacey Risdahl, the Public Works Admin Division Manager, and I think Sue Kutza-George, the Finance Director, is here behind me. I also have Dr. Gary Manross from Strategy Research Institute Consulting, who did the public opinion survey work for us, and we'll roll into his presentation here as well. So this afternoon, I wanted to give a brief overview of our pavement management system. I know that there's some new council members here on the council, as well as some people who haven't been around from the beginning, and I thought it would be good to just do a little bit of background. Also to give an overview of the 2008-2011 bond measure, to talk about what is the role of the Citizen Street Repair Review Panel and what did they do, what their eventual recommendation was for the next bond measure, and then we'll also go over the public opinion survey results with some time for questions and answers. So the background of our pavement management system is that we, Public Works, manages 543 centerline miles of street. So one of the common measurement terms that you'll hear in talking about pavement preservation is lane miles, because that will convert everything to a single equivalent measurement. And so a lane mile is one 12-foot wide lane that's 1 mile in length. So every street can be then converted to a lane mile, and you can then compare street to street. For the city of Eugene, then that means that 543 centerline miles equates to 1,356 lane miles. And of the total system, a little over 1,200 of those lane miles are improved streets. And then off-street shared use paths, we have 45 miles of those in the city that we maintain. When we have a process where we review the condition of all the city streets, arterials and collectors are reviewed and evaluated every year. Local neighborhood streets are evaluated every 3 years, and the off-street paths are evaluated every 2 years. So when we review those streets, we're going to come up with some recommendations of what kind of work is needed around the city. So we document all the distresses of the street, so potholes, cracking, heaving, rutting, whatever those things are. We also make some evaluations of what type of work do we think that the street needs in order to bring it up to full condition. Can we overlay it? Do we have to reconstruct it? What do we have to do? Or can we get by with a slurry seal? And then also the third bullet there is when we have more work than we have funds, then we have what's called a backlog or a pavement, or we have deferred pavement preservation. So in the 2017 payment management report, which I presented to you a couple months ago now, I think it is, that was based on 2016 rating data, a few things to just remember that in 2007, before we had a bond measure, we were projecting that the backlog would reach $282 million by 2016. In 2008, it was estimated that the backlog was at $171 million. And as of last year, it's estimated at $92 million. So we can definitely see the benefits of the bond measure passing. But you'll notice when you look at that little graph that the little tail of it starts climbing back up again. And the explanation for that is on the next slide when we talk about what is our annual need for payment preservation. So back in 2008, it was projected that we needed $27 million a year to fund the needed payment preservation. And the bond measure has done a lot of good work, and it's brought that annual need down to $14.6 million. But when I get down a little further in this presentation, you'll see that even with the bond measure, we're not quite at that annual need. So that's why we start seeing that tail climb back up again. One thing to think about as far as the backlog is that we looked at center line or lane miles that need work, and we still have 1/3 of our system that actually still needs work. So an overview of the bond measure. As you know, in 2008, voters passed a $39 million bond measure, and that named 32 streets to be done. It averaged a little over $6 million a year for payment preservation. It allocated $350,000 a year to be used on off-street paths. And we completed that project list under budget, and we repaired an additional 9 streets that were approved by council. So all those projects were completed in 2013. Oops. Oh, oops. So then in 2012, another 5-year bond measure was passed, and that's the one that we're in right now. We're in year 4 of the 5 years, and it's $43 million. It named 76 streets. So one of the things that you'll see, and if you'll remember from our payment management report, is that our backlog is now becoming more heavy on local neighborhood streets. So that's another reason why you see that number jumping up, because those smaller streets, it takes more of them to cost the same amount as like an arterial street. So that's why part of the reason why you see the number jump up, as well as the increase in cost. So the average ended up being a little over $8 million a year for payment preservation. The amount for funding pedestrian bicycle improvements jumped up a little bit to $516,000. That's about 6% of the street work. And projects began in 2014 and are scheduled to be complete in 2018. So just to refresh your memory about how is capital street preservation funded, since 2008, in addition to the bond measure, we've had our local gas tax, which is 5 cents per gallon. It generates about $3 million a year. We have system development charges, which are the reimbursable component that's dedicated to payment preservation. That comes out to about $200,000 to $300,000 a year. And then since 2008, we've had 2 projects that have also used federal transportation dollars, and that was a section of Coburg Road and a section of 18th Avenue. And just for perspective, since 2008, the bond measure has funded 130 lane miles of street improvements. So another part that we report on an annual basis about is that back when the economy was not doing so well, ODOT did a lot around trying to stimulate the economy through construction, and one of the measurements that they put out there was they developed this model that they could take by how much money was being spent on construction, how many full-time construction jobs were being sustained over that construction period. And so we've been using that as well and reporting on that. And so what you can see that is that since 2010, and that's when we started using this model, was that approximately 99 jobs per year were generated. We had 69 last year, and we had a high in 2013 of 151 jobs. And as you're probably aware, that bond-funded projects do not just do street paving work. We've been able to address accessibility and safety for all street users. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we're required to upgrade sidewalk curb ramps with our paving projects. So I'm sure that driving around town, you've seen a lot of those done because we've been doing a lot of paving. But there's also been a lot of enhanced crossings for pedestrians, accessible signals, and just a variety of work done. Another piece of our payment management system, and something that the bond has really allowed us to grow in the city of Eugene, is that we do a lot to lower project costs and reduce the environmental footprint by the methods that we choose to use on pavement preservation. So we use a technology of warm mix asphalt, which reduces greenhouse off-gassing and the production of asphalt pavement. We also used fairly high in the state of reclaimed asphalt materials in our pavements, which reduce the amount of virgin asphalt, cement, and rock that has to be mined and crushed and produced and trucked to the asphalt producers. And just a couple of things to note is that in 2013, we were recognized by the Oregon chapter of APWA for our use of sustainability methods in our pavement preservation program, as well as been published at the national APWA level. And then we were also recognized by the Asphalt Pavement Association of Oregon in one of their quarterly newsletters as being a leader in reclaimed asphalt pavement usage. And so of the two bond measures, like I said, there's a pedestrian and bicycling portion to each of those. And just as the reminder, $350,000 a year was in the 2008 bond measure. That was specifically allocated to off-street paths. After we finished that bond measure, there was a desire to have some more flexibility with the funding and be able to target what would be the priorities in the pedestrian bicycle master plan or the active transportation committee. And so we adjusted the language in 2012 to provide that flexibility, as well as increase the amount to 6% of the bond. So that was $516,000 a year in the 2012 measure. And in addition to bond funds, active transportation projects are also funded with transportation SDCs, usually in the form of match for federal grants and state grants. So in the previous bond measures, we get a lot of question about how are streets selected to be in the bond measure. And these are kind of the high-level description of what we do. I mean, obviously, with the backlog as large as we have, there's more projects than we can afford to do. And so the first priority that we look at is geographic distribution, because there are some areas of town that have a lot older streets. And so, I mean, we could theoretically spend most of our money in just one area of a town. But because this is a bond measure for the entire city, geographic distribution is a high priority in how we select streets. We look at the payment management system data, focusing on arterials collectors. Are the streets in a school zone? Are they on a transit route? Is it a popular bicycle lane street? And one of the things I'll get to here a little bit later, but we also considered Vision Zero. We have an initial list of some priority Vision Zero streets, so we looked at where those fit on the list. And then, of course, we have the citizen input, and that's primarily done now through the Street Repair Review Panel. So the other feature of the two previous bond measures is the accountability and transparency piece. And both the bond measures had the same language and the same requirements, and that was that there were named street projects in the bonds, that it required that an outside auditor be hired to review the books each year and prepare a report, and that also that the Citizen Street Repair Review Panel would be convened to review the projects each year. And so for 2016, 2017, these are the 12 members that participated in the annual report, as well as preparing a recommendation for this coming bond. And before the meeting, there was at least 2 people that were in here. Gary Wildish and John Borofsky were here in the audience. Oh, and Sue Walling made it too. Great. So, after we prepared the annual report this year, we came to council and presented that and received direction to go ahead and work with the Street Repair Review Panel to come up with a recommendation for a proposed 2017 bond measure. And that group met 4 times between March and June, and considered these various things, again, very similar to the last 2 bond measures. What should the tax rate be in the total bond amount? What should be the distribution between pavement preservation and the ped and bike master or improvements? What projects should be selected for the pavement preservation piece, and the accountability provisions? Do we want to change anything about those? Some other things that came up were we talked about Vision Zero funding and railroad quiet zone, and that will be reflected in the survey, public opinion survey results of that we asked for feedback on that. One thing that we talked about but ended up not including in the survey was about unimproved streets. So there was a lot of dialogue during the SRRP about how to get a valid opinion from the public when it's really difficult for people to understand, including the people that were in the discussion, about what is the difference between an improved and unimproved street. And there was some discussion about that there may be some other resources that could better fund that, and I can talk about that some more if you would like to dive a little deeper into the unimproved streets section. So the GO bond, the way that we work this is a little bit different than a lot of bonding situations. We have been doing this using a line of credit. So rather than go out for a bond as soon as the voters pass and get the whole amount, we just use a line of credit to pay for the project expenses and then use the tax receipts in November or at the end of the year to pay that off. So one of the benefits is that we keep the bonding amount really low, so there's low interest, as well as when we get done with the 5 years, we don't have any long-term debt for these projects, so they're paid off at the end of the bond. And those are just some quick assumptions of what we used to look at the bonding and how much do we want to create the bond for. And one of the things that you'll see here is that there is some information about assessed values, and one of the recommendations is to keep the bond rate the same as it's been in the last 2 bond measures, and you'll still see that total amount go up because assessed values have been increasing, and so the total amount, even though the same rate is being used, does go up. And I kept this slide in. This is these 3 slides are all from Sue Cutsa-George. This one will show part of the discussion that we had with the SRP, because we did look at do we want to change the rate, and what would be the implications of changing the rate of the bonds? So the first line is we keep the same tax rate. The second one is if we were to fully fund the paving program, so that $14.6 million a year that I talked about earlier, if we wanted to make sure that that was fully funded, here's what we would need. And then just for some added flexibility, we said, here's what it would cost to the public if we wanted to add $1 million increment to each year. So the proposed bond measure amount is to use the same average tax rate of 65 cents per $1,000 in assessed value, which is estimated to result in a 5-year bond of $51.2 million. After deducting bond issuance fees and projected inflation, this would leave $47.2 million for projects. The SRRP recommended allocating $42.2 million of that total for street preservation projects. And like I said, they used a variety of criteria, street classification, street zones, LTD transit routes, Vision Zero, and then if it's a popular bicycling route, and just geographic distribution. And for the pedestrian and bicycling component of the bond, it was recommended to increase that to $1 million a year, so it would be $5 million over the 5 years. Based on the survey result, or the survey results, was to add some language in the project selection to address that we want to use safety as part of the criteria to select projects. And I will say that this decision had a lot of discussion with the SRP over more than one meeting, and the end decision was not unanimous on increasing that rate. And just if we would have kept the 6% rate, that would have come out to $660,000 a year as opposed to the $1 million recommendation. The SRP also recommends retaining the accountability provisions, just like the other two, other two bond measures. And so then this is a summary of the final recommendation. Like I said, to renew the bond at the same average tax rate of 65 cents per thousand over the 5-year period, generating $51.2 million. Allocating $42.2 million for street preservation, $5 million for active transportation, continue the accountability provisions, include a named street list, which I was able to get you a map. I didn't get it into your packet earlier, but I have a street list with a map, and this is right hot off the presses, so it's still marked as a draft and for review, as well as include a safety criteria in the selection of active transportation projects. The other thing that I have up here is that they did specifically recommend that the railroad quiet zone not be included in the bond measure. So I think now we can switch over to Dr. Gary Manross to talk a little bit more about the public opinion.
I'm just wondering if council want to ask some questions on your report first, if that's okay. I have Mike, I have Betty, I have Alan. Anybody else in the queue? Okay, Mike, go for it.
Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you for that report. That was quite a lot of work.
I feel like I flew through it.
Wow,
So.
No. And I'm looking at this map too, and it looks like you guys are going to pave my house here. Apparently, this is okay. 2 questions. Number one, in every place that you used the term, I think your term was shared use path, that's bicycle and pedestrian paths, right? In no cases did you, when you're talking about, let me formulate a better question. Several places you group together paths along with unimproved roads. So in all cases, those are all delineated separately. Isn't that correct? I mean, there's no.
Yeah, if I combined them, I didn't mean to, because we do keep track of them separately.
You mentioned 543 center miles. What was the lane miles? 11 something?
Yeah, that was 13.
13.
Let's see, where is that? I know that it's 1,246 lane miles is the
Okay.
improved.
What's the lane miles of unimproved?
It is going to be then the difference between that and the 1,356. So it's about 100 lane miles.
That's all there is in unimproved roads?
Yes.
How many?
100 lane miles. I thought it was considerably more than that. The reason I thought that is because the number for the costs of backlog of deferred maintenance on unimproved roads is a pretty big number.
No, it's actually pretty small. I don't have that off the top of my head, but it was somewhere around less than $5 million compared to what we need for everything. That was according to the 2016 data report that I presented a couple months ago.
Interesting.
So
All in your ward.
No, actually, it's interesting. The number, when you look at this, the stark thing to me is I would think most of them are in Ward 7, and there's less to do perhaps in Ward 7.
So the street list that I gave you, even though it's it shows those aren't necessarily all the projects that need to be done in those wards. So those, there are definitely 4 wards. I think it was 4 wards that I had to reduce the list from in order to get some geographic, not parity, but some equity.
Reasonable balance.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Betty?
Thank you. I would hope you'd be doing them where they're needed more rather than just geographically. But a question I had was, every 3 years you look at local streets. Do the people who live on those streets know when you've looked at them and what the prognosis is?
Probably not. There's nothing that is explicitly announced or published.
Well, how would we know if our street's been looked at?
Well, every street has been looked at.
So I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you wanted to find out what the specific condition of a street was and what we thought the recommended treatment would be for that, calling the engineering division, which a number of people do. We have a number of people that will call us and ask us about their street and what we think needs to be done with it and when it might be scheduled.
We can be sure that our street isn't going to fall in.
Well, that's the goal, but as I presented, that we do not currently have enough money to prevent all streets from falling into that reconstruct category.
Okay. The backlog, I wondered, how do you decide the order in which the ones on the backlog advance to the top? So
using the same criteria that the citizen review panel used to select streets for the bond measure, we use the arterials and collectors as one of our first criteria, but then we do look at whether it's a popular bicycling street, whether it's a school zone, a transit route. Transit routes generally do receive quite a bit of damage, so that jumps up in category. And just kind of considering all of those livability issues of how to promote a street higher up on that list.
Do complaints help?
I think that the complaints generally fall in line with the things that we know. But I would say that we do not generally select streets purely on complaints.
Oh, okay. I didn't see my street on here, but I did see, I'm glad to see Oak Street. I drive that a lot, and it really needs help.
Yes.
Thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, thank you. Nice work. A lot of work.
Yeah.
Putting this all together. We've made significant progress on getting our backlog. When we started, it was 200 and something million, 270 million or something like that. And now we're down to, what is it now? About
92
million, right? And the next slide that we had, slide 6, I don't know if you can get to that, but it showed that we're not quite meeting our the amount of money that we need to completely deal with our road system. And that's because the council didn't choose to implement the full council committee recommendation. The council committee actually came up with a fully funded program, but we didn't institute the $1 per garbage hauler, $1 per residence for garbage haulers, which cause an enormous amount of damage because they're very big trucks, and bigger trucks cause a lot more damage. So we didn't implement that, and we didn't implement the kind of the user fee, where you paid for how much you used the street. So those two things were two things that we didn't end up doing, which results in the deficit. Interesting to note that the state is moving towards paying for roads based on how much you use the roads. In fact, they now have Origo is a program you can voluntarily pay by every mile you drive, as opposed to using the gas tax. Instead of increasing the title or registration fees. Electric vehicles would be a good example for that. So we could go back and look at fully funding those things by looking at those things again. I do have a question about the quiet zone, but I think I'll wait until after Dr. Manros is done, because I think it'll become clearer. I support the increase in the bike ped to $1 million, up from 516. I think it's now in a little over 10%, which is probably still not enough to actually deal with the bike ped plan. I think when we first looked at the bike ped plan and the amount of funding we had when we first looked at this stuff, it was a 100-year plan to fund it all. I would like to get at this funding level, the remainder of the projects. You can get back to me on this. You probably don't have this off the top of your head, do you, Jennifer? No. How long it would take to fund the rest of the bike ped plan at this level. And then I didn't quite understand the levy. The bond as a line of credit. So it's not a levy, which is different. So are we actually selling a bond, or are we doing a line of credit?
The line of credit is the bond.
So
it's just a really short-term bond.
So it's just for the 5-year period?
Yes. Well, it's basically we borrow for less than a year every year. So we borrow during construction season and we pay it off when the property taxes come in November.
Right. So in that case, the benefit of that is you don't have the long-term interest costs associated with it and the debt associated with that, and it's a smarter way to go.
Correct.
You basically just pay for it out of property taxes.
Right. And as Jennifer mentioned, when you're done, you don't have
any debt.
Right. You don't have a debt.
And we've done that all along in the 5 years. Yeah. Sort of like a levy, but not quite. Okay, that makes sense to me.
Except it's outside of the Measure 5 limits. So
yeah, which is significantly different, or significant benefit too. Yeah, so that makes a big, huge difference. Okay. I'll need another round when it comes around.
Emily, and then Jennifer.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. It was very clear. I have a couple of smallish questions. On the first sheet we got about the list of the names, a lot of the streets have SS and NS. Is that north side and south side?
Correct.
So that would mean that the intersection part is either already repaired or not needing it right now?
Correct.
Okay, so there's little chunks out of it. Could you say again what a lane mile is and why it's different and what we need it for?
Right. So if you think of center line miles, almost every street in the system is a different width. So you could have some streets that are 21 feet, 28 feet. You could have Coburg Road and it's like 70 feet or 72 feet or something like that. So how do you equate how much work there is to do on each of those streets? So then we convert all of those center line miles to a 12-foot wide, 1 mile long lane mile. So.
And how does that take into account the different widths?
So like Coburg Road, if you have 4 lanes that are 12 feet wide, then each one of those lanes will end up being in the total. So you'd end up having, 4 lane miles.
Got it. That's great. And I just can't remember what SDC system development charges are, where they come from, what they're about. I know it's not really this topic, but.
Right. So in my most simplistic method, those would be the fees that we charge developers based on their impact on their development.
Thank you. I really appreciate that we're looking into the recycling, the warm mix asphalt and in-place recycling, and the Vision Zero. I think those are critical. I also appreciate the increase for active transportation. And I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Jennifer?
So I had a question on the unimproved lane miles that you were talking about earlier. Does the 5 million, would that bring them all the way up to the improved?
No.
Or just fix with
Right.
like, potholes and stuff?
Right.
Okay, so the total bringing them up would be much higher.
Yeah, and so just to kind of build on that a little bit, because you're newer and you weren't here to talk about unimproved streets. So what the city's been doing for several years now is that our Public Works Maintenance Division has been doing what we're calling an enhanced street repair program. It's about $200,000 a year that's being spent on these unimproved streets. It really started out as focusing on potholes, but there were some streets that they were kind of one big pothole, and so they ended up doing some different versions of a thin overlay or things like that. It's not bringing it up to full improvements. It's not doing a bunch of things to enhance walkability and things like that. It's mainly just dealing with the pavement condition of those unimproved streets.
Okay. And I am very supportive of you guys upping for the active transportation. I think that's great. That's really important. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other first round questions? Claire, do you have any questions?
No, thanks, Mayor.
Okay. All right, Alan, you're up for second round.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand the impact of the underlined sentence in the slide about bike ped $1 million, where it said, where did it say that? Well, I'll read it off here. It said for $1 million to be allocated over a period of 5 years to support bicycle and pedestrian projects guided by pedestrian and bicycle master plan, city staff, the active transportation committee, and the city's goals to increase safety and on city streets. That last part seems to be related to Vision Zero, but does that mean that Vision Zero is going to get part of that $1 million, or is it Vision Zero as it relates to bike ped?
So I think that Dr. Manross can get a little bit, because this was mostly in response to the survey or the public opinion survey questions or the responses there, is that not to completely steal his thunder, but there was some opinion that was not supportive. I mean, a significant amount of opinion was not supportive of increasing the active transportation component at the expense of pavement preservation. But that safety was considered a high priority in the community. And so given that most people, or a significant portion of people, did not necessarily identify with what the term Vision Zero meant, adding in that safety language could potentially get some more support for the active transportation increase.
So that then potentially could detract from the $1 million being spent on active transportation?
Well, I think that these are my impressions of the discussion that took place around the table, but that a lot of the active transportation projects do enhance safety and address Vision Zero principles. And so that was a way of bringing in the Vision Zero principles of increasing safety on the streets, and that often these projects are directly in line with that.
I had a question about one particular project on the map in my ward and in Betty's ward. It's 11 and 12 there, where 19th gets fixed except for this 3 block, and then it gets fixed again, going from 12 to 11 from right to left. Why wouldn't you just do that whole section through there?
I would have to look at the exact data and get back to you on that one.
That is in front of the new school.
Right. So sometimes there's sections that were improved or have been repaired more recently than others. The other issue that I came across on some of these was that there might be sections of concrete street between two asphalt paved sections, and the concrete, while it wasn't perfect or pristine, it really was serviceable for a long period of time.
Yeah. There's one that's not on here that I wish were on here, which is Villard in front of Matt Knight Arena. When that marina was built, we made an arrangement with the U of O that they would rebuild half the street and we would rebuild the other half. Well, the half that they built, which is on the west side, is perfectly fine, but the amount of traffic that goes through there is just stunning because of the basketball arena and the events and things like that. The part that's our responsibility, which is the east side of Villard for that 1 block period, is just falling apart. And it's not on the list, and I think that really should get on the list as something that needs to be rebuilt. It's one of the streets that people from all over the city use and see, and it's just right. I had Kurt go out there and fill the potholes, and there's 5 of them that were this big or better. And so it is a concrete street, but it's just falling apart because of the traffic and the buses and the heavy traffic that goes through there. So I'm wondering if you could get back to me on the status of that portion of the street, whether or not it can be added here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Emily, one more round.
Thank you. When you were talking about the safety criteria that wasn't unanimously approved, did you mention there was a list of those?
So it wasn't that the safety criteria, it was the increase from the 6% proportion for active transportation to the about 10% that is now being proposed that wasn't unanimous.
Okay.
So if we just follow the 6% under the current of the proposed total, that would have come out to $660,000 a year for active transportation. And the SRRP did end up voting to increase it to $1 million, but that was not a unanimous decision.
Okay, thank you. Mixed-use paths, that includes separate sidewalks and separate bike paths, or just paths that are used for both?
Paths that are used for both.
So this doesn't include anything for bike paths or sidewalk repair, unless the bike path is on the street?
So I think you might be asking about the 2008 version where it said that it was dedicated only to off-street shared use paths.
Okay, so this one's different?
So this one's different. This one is that the projects are chosen by this looking at the pedestrian and bicycle master plan, the active transportation committee, staff recommendations, and safety. So there isn't a set project list for the active transportation at this time.
So when will that be determined?
So that has been being determined on an annual basis, going through all those different materials and mostly working with the Active Transportation Commission to determine what the priorities should be.
So would we get a list each year of what those are?
So the last 5 years, so with this current bond measure, what has happened is that we have included in our annual street repair review panel report that we submit, there's been an appendix written by Reed Dunbar, who's a transportation planner and engineering, that talks about the projects that they've done and what they're looking at doing next year. And so it's basically been being identified on an annual basis.
And will we get that information?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
As part of those annual reports is what our current practice is.
But it will identify
Yes.
bike paths and sidewalks that have been or will be worked on?
Yeah.
Because it's not included here, but I just want to make sure it was part of this bond.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that takes care of the questions, and we're now ready for your.
If I could just, it has not been, the project list has not been included in the bond before, and so we weren't proposing to do that this time either. Okay.
But the projects are included in?
They receive the funding.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And then the annual report will tell which projects have been done and which ones are anticipated to be done that next year.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was very thorough and very helpful. And Dr. Manross?
Great. Is this on? Yeah. It's very, thank you for allowing me to appear, and it's great seeing most of you again and the new people. It's my pleasure, and it's also, I always enjoy coming to Eugene. As you know, I used to live in the neighborhood, so I'm biased. I love Eugene. The methodologies we should discuss first, and this is the, let's see, which way? This one? Okay, got it. Okay, so the first thing I should actually mention is that it's very common to look at these polls and say it's a public opinion poll, and it really isn't. It's a survey of your electorate. So when you look at the demographic distribution, for example, if you're looking at it compared to the city at large, you would go, oh gosh, there's too many seniors. And the answer to that is, well, yeah, because guess who votes? So who you want to survey when making a decision involving a funding measure is you want to survey the people who vote. That's your electorate, and that's who we did survey. The sample size was 417. There's also a model you've heard me talk about before, that the opinion leaders versus the mainstream, and the reason we look at that is voting is a follow the leader process, and that's particularly true when you're voting by mail ballot as opposed to both mail ballot and at the polls. We really need to know the collective, first you have to identify them, which we've done, and then you need to know their collective core values and how they feel about that particular funding measure and how they want the money spent, for example. So we have 57, and that's 13.5% of your, I think in this case, close to 15% of your total registered voters. That gives you a sampling error plus or minus 4 to 5%. We gathered our data from June 12th to June 17th, so it's very fresh. This isn't history. The benchmark voter survey before arguments, as you know, we test if you were to, so does everybody else, if you were to vote today, how would you vote? We explain what the city is considering and how much that would be and how the money would be spent. And then we ask, would you support yes or no? In this case, we have, it's discouraging in this sense, it's 48% said yes. And of that, 26% said definite yes, and 22% said probably yes. Now, we have a model called the go-no-go-no model. And what that is if somebody calls you on the phone and you agree to be surveyed, and you say, okay, what are you really asking about? And they said, oh, yeah, I'm going to vote yes. Can I now come back to city council and say that's a yes? And the answer is no, that'd be naive. So many years ago, we came up with a model that said, well, let's break that out into definite yes and probable yes. Now, let me tell you what we know. Let me tell you what we don't know. What we know is if they say, oh, definitely yes, then two things are going to happen. They're more likely to actually vote, which is critical. And it's going to be about 90, we believe 90 to 91% will actually vote and vote yes. If they say, well, probably, again, we don't really know what that means, but we believe, and this is studying this for 25, 30 years, we think 52 to 53, no more than 54%, you can count that as a yes vote. So what we do, our model takes 100% of the definites and half of the probables. Historically, that has gotten, including here in Eugene many times, that gets us almost spot on, or within 1 to 2% of reality, even though statistical margin of error is greater than that, usually 4.5 to 5.8%. So what's curious in this particular one that is unique is that 37% were undecided. And that was awesome. I'm sitting here looking at that, and so I'm real confident in these data because I actually took my behavioral scientist and put their feet to the fire and said, "You look at these data. This is unusual. Why are so many people? Did we do something wrong?" The answer is no, we didn't, and we figured that out. But that means that when you look at likely voter support, it would typically be 37%, and that's not true in this case. So the question is, what's going to happen to that 37%? And I'll tell you right now, I'll show you a slide in a moment, but what happened, and this is amazing, when your voters found out how the money was going to be spent, those undecideds, they didn't go to a probable yes. 100% of them went to definite yes. Think about that. That's amazing. So, in other words, your electorate simply wants to know how you're going to spend the money. It's that simple. So the arguments then we tested. Now we have this net shift, and I think we're the only polling firm or institute that does this. Mostly you get what's called gross shift. You take each argument and you ask, if you heard this argument from a source you trusted, a credible source, would it make you more inclined to vote yes or vote no? And they subtract those two. Well, that's ridiculous because those numbers are up in the 20s to 40%. Now, if you believe that one argument is going to shift voter support 20 to 40%, so back when I got into the game many years ago, I'm going, this can't be right. I'm smart enough to know that, good horse sense. And so what we do is we actually create an equation and we call it net shift. And it says, okay, if somebody goes from probable yes to definite yes, at the polls it doesn't change, does it? A yes is a yes, and a no is a no. So we look at what goes from yes to no and no to yes. And that is your net shift, and that is very useful intelligence. So you can see here, we're very fortunate that the arguments all work the way you would expect them to. And I drew a line there for a reason. If you look for that 1.2 down to 0.5%, that's a huge jump. And this isn't literal. I always encourage clients not to take this literally. What's useful is rank ordering. And so in this particular case, in fact, I'm going to do something here. Just bear with me a moment. Okay. So the first, I should mention one other thing. In terms of reality, voters, and you'll think of yourself, and you'll know this is true. You make your decision to vote yes or no based on one or two and no more than three factors. And the minute somebody starts talking about 20 things, you go, yeah, you forget about it. It's your core values which drive your decision making. And you're going to base it on one or two or three things, and then you're probably going to call somebody you trust. If at all the hiccup at all, well, gee, I'm not sure. I think it's a good idea. You call somebody you trust. There's your opinion leader, which is why we pull out the opinion leaders. So in this case, it's very clear. There's three messages that drive a yes vote, and the first one is the renewal of an existing levy that we've been. This is a renewal of an existing levy that we've been paying since 2008. And the tax rate will not increase. If the revenue, and this is critical, if the revenue stream isn't kept in place, our city streets will begin to deteriorate almost immediately. That's a big deal to your constituents. So it's not a question of, gee, I want a whole lot more. But let me tell you, they don't want that to go backwards. They don't want the wonderful job. You know, once in a while, and this is one of them, you get punished for doing a great job. And so your public works department and your through your direction has really, I drive around the street a lot. They're beautiful streets. They're well maintained. And your constituents appreciate that. But then they're saying, okay, we want to keep it. We don't want them to deteriorate. But do we need to put a lot more money in? I don't particularly want to pay more taxes. The second one is, in order to maintain our present quality of life in Eugene, including safety, and safety is a big deal. It's the number 2 core value today. Many times that's the first one. Well, in this case, it turns out to be the second one, but it's vital. And so, in order to maintain our streets and our present quality of life, including safety on the streets, it's absolutely essential that our streets are properly maintained. Thus, we need to keep this revenue stream in place. The third one is critical as well. It's an independent auditor will monitor all expenditures from any tax year measure approved by the local voters. Now, this is, and they'll produce an annual report as they do now. Now, you can anticipate, if you look at the next one, the Citizen Advisory Committee, comprised of individuals, will monitor this. That's always very important. But the independent auditor carries more weight than an advisory committee, and the reason for that is the electorate has a sense of, well, you know, who's ever on the advisory committee has been appointed by city council, therefore they're going to be a touch biased. But if it's an independent audit that publishes an annual report that is public, that just carries some weight. So you really, there's your message strategy. And if you do that, if you follow this, the end result is look at the potential support. it goes up. And it goes up 29%. I'm sorry, I apologize. The undecided goes down 29% to 8%, and that's where it belongs. The potential support goes way up. Your likely voter support, however, is still at 48.5%, and it's up 11.5%. And likely support before was 37, so it goes up to 48.5. But guess what? You still need a majority vote. So the question is what to do about that. And the answer is, the good news here is you only have 19% definite no, and you have 12% possibly no. So the bottom line is if you must communicate with your constituents. They have to understand, and this is, I'm not trying to play attorney, but from both a moral and, frankly, a legal perspective, it's incumbent upon city council, city officials, to tell your constituents what you want to do, why you want to do it, what it's going to cost, and then the consequences of doing it and not doing it. So the consequence in this case of not doing it is the streets go into disrepair and begin to deteriorate almost immediately. What you can't do, period, is you can't advocate. You can't say vote yes, and by the way, you can't even say vote no. You can as an individual, but not as city council or not as city official. So it's urgent in this case. And you saw the shift that went from 37 down to 8%. So the question is, if I know what you're going to do, then I'm with you, because it didn't go to probable yes. 100% of it went to definite yes. Therefore, it's urgent that you get out and talk to your constituents and explain what you want to do, why you want to do it. But it's also urgent to tell them that that we're not increasing the tax rate. We're not asking you to, dig deeper. We're just asking you to maintain what we have. It's a status quo issue. Maintain what we have, and they'll be with you. So some of these people, the probable yeses, will come over here. I'm going to tell you something that I don't normally tell a client, but I have insurance in here because we want to make sure whatever we tell the client is truthful. And you can take it to the bank. Well, some of these undecideds are still going to come over to yes, probably up to half of them. And if they do, then you're over your threshold. But if you don't communicate, you are in serious jeopardy of not making it. So it's urgent that you communicate. And this is really interesting. We all know that seniors are high propensity voters. And by the way, that's even more true when you're voting by mail than when you're voting at the polls. So the good news here is over 65, once they hear the arguments and the need, that pushes very nicely. You're 41 to 65. It still pushes in the right direction, but only 2.5 to 3.5%. But your 18 to 40-year-olds, again, it resonates. The need resonates with these folks. So this, and the good news here, again, is you're going to have a huge ratio of your electorate that votes will be in the senior category, and they really appreciate. And by the way, that's why you want to focus on safety. I can tell you right now that's a big issue with seniors. Me being one, I can tell you it's true. Stuff like that. So we did ask a very serious question, two of them actually, and the question was, would you be willing to support a 5-year general obligation bond that would generate enough money not only to keep city streets in good condition, but continue to reduce the existing backlog of deferred street maintenance and provide funding for additional bicycle and pedestrian projects, assuming, of course, that the tax rate does not exceed your level of willingness to pay. And you do not have, look at that, you only have 7% definite yes. You also have this huge 30% undecided. But even when you push it, the potential is only 38%. So that means adding these two. So you're not going to, your likely support is 22.5. That's not true. Just like the other one, it would go up, but it wouldn't go anywhere near simple majority. So increasing it, no. Keep the tax rate the same. It's as I noted a moment ago, it's a status quo issue. So we ask a different question, which is similar but different. Whoops, sorry. Where's the slide? All right, well, I'll just tell you what it is. We also ask, would you be willing to take some of the money from the street bond and put it over to bike and pedestrian and other things? And the answer ends up being no. Now, and it's almost to the same number. So now we ask about 3 projects, and this is interesting. This is a Vision Zero project. I'm extremely impressed with whoever came up with it, and so is your electorate. But what's interesting, only 29% of your voters had even heard of the Vision Zero. And so we ask them, how aware are you of these 3 programs, and then could you rank order them for us? And you can see Vision Zero came out way on top. And you can see that in 2 ways. It's right here, obviously, but also when we look at top priority, 38 down to 24. Now, this isn't consistent. That would pop up here, but it doesn't matter in this case. So the bottom line is, once they learn about your Vision Zero, and guess what Vision Zero is all about? Public safety, right? I mean, there it is. Your constituents really care about public safety, but they also care about having a walkable and a bike-friendly community. They absolutely do, and you have a history in this. You're well known throughout the United States, frankly, for what you've been doing. Quiet zone, not so much. The awareness level was actually about 50% of your electorate was aware of that. But in rank ordering, it was the least of concern where we would want money spent. So here's the second slide. So we ask, unfortunately, there's no revenue stream dedicated to funding these 3 programs. So would you be willing to pay a slightly higher rate for a street bond in order to fund them? And the answer, again, is no. Now, you're closer to, your potential is closer to a simple majority. But look at that, your onshore is only 4%. So if you took half of those and put over there, you're still 48%. So it just isn't in the cards. Now, I know the recommendation, somebody's going to ask me this, so I might as well answer it straight up. I know your committee wants to increase that to $1 million. That particular expenditure, take $1 million out of the street bond as opposed to, what is it, 600,000, something like that. And it's not, that isn't going to be the difference between winning and losing. So I would not, personally, I would not counsel against that. Initially, I would have. But when I thought this through and I went back and looked at some numbers when I understood what the recommendation was going to be, that's not a deal breaker. But if you don't, again, I'm repeating myself, but if you don't get the message out about status quo and streets deteriorating, it will go down in flames. You just must get that message out. But if you get that message out and focus on public safety, as Jennifer said, then in fact, I think you'll be just fine. Okay, well then would you be willing to support the idea of earmarking some of the monies from successful general bond street bond to funding at least one of the 3 programs, understanding that there would be less funding available for street and road maintenance? You don't have you don't have support for that, but again, that's close. This is why I'm saying it's not a deal breaker. This is close enough to a simple majority. And your 15% undecided is a little higher than I would expect it. But fact is, you've got a nice definite and you have a large probable. So I don't think it's a deal breaker because your constituents truly want to maintain what you've done and keep it going. But that said, they're not willing to address the backlog. And if there's some sad news in here, I would argue that's it. It'd be nice to be able to continue. You've been beautiful about taking that backlog down over time. And I saw that little curl at the end. It started to go up a little bit. But status quo says we want you to maintain and not necessarily address the backlog. So if you can, just keep it at least where it's at. Don't let it go up. But they're not willing to pay more money to address the backlog. Now, remember I said core values are critical to this, and that is what drives voter opinion, so we tie it together. And this has nothing to do with you. I just thought you'd like to, with the issue of the day, I thought you'd like to see this. This is an open-ended question when we say, look, is there anything you have in your mind today? We don't give them a list and do a forced choice. We say, is there anything, 64% said, yeah, there's something I'm especially concerned about, and homelessness is way out in front. And that got me curious, and so I went back and looked at the last 3 surveys we've done in Eugene, not all of them for the city, and look at that. Back in 2012, it was 7%. Then the library study we did went to 12, and now it's at 37%. So homelessness in this community is of serious concern. that's the good news. The bad news is, which you'll see on one of the slides in a moment, your constituents, your voters aren't willing to pay for it. They want it addressed. They want city council to address it, but they don't want to necessarily pay more money to get it done. The real key here, too, and this is good news, issues of concern when we did a rank ordering. Need for president, and we gave them all these and said, please rank order them. And so you can look at that, the top three, need for street preservation and street repair. And street repair is preservation. I mean, you have natural, they just want it kept and maintained. And public safety, those are your two. And economic development, I was interested in that because of the work we did for the city and for others before. You still have a high concern in this community for economic development, meaning bringing new businesses into the community and with jobs with a livable wage. And that's your economic development. Then high cost of housing drops, traffic congestion, environmental issues improve, downtown, vitality of downtown, and then safety improvement to public transportation. So you want to, we defined each of these. And so what you want to do is this does not correspond to this public safety. We're just talking about in public safety, keep your streets safe, right? And that's a big deal. The spending priorities also from a policy level decision-making is important. You can see right there, it's a hot topic, encourage economic and business development, increase maintenance of street parks, make streets more bikeable friendly. But look at that, remember I mentioned homeless? I knew they weren't willing to pay it. Yes, they want you to address it, but no, we don't necessarily want to pay for it. Pay any more for it anyway. So that, from a policy level perspective, I would think would be instructive and helpful. I hope it is. So I'll happily entertain any questions that you have.
Great. Okay, Greg in the queue. Anybody else in the queue? Alan?
I'd like to be in the queue, Mayor.
Claire. Okay, Greg, Alan, and then Claire.
Dr. Van Ross, did you disaggregate any of this the data based on wards?
Yes, we did, and you'll be getting a report, and that the wards are in there, and we can, anything you want to know that isn't there, just ask your city manager, and we'll happily give it to you. Yes, we looked at the slide that'll be in there, shows you support by ward.
Okay.
And if you want to know anything else, so you go through and you go, wow, how's that operating in my ward? Just ask the city manager, he'll instruct me to give it to you, and I'll do it in a heartbeat.
Okay, thanks. Look forward to it.
Alan?
So we'll be getting this.
Yes. Yeah, the only reason I apologize, but it's fresh data, and boy, we stood on our head to make this workshop. So
thank you for that. Thank you for getting us the map. That's even probably fresher. The one slide where after you told them where it was going to go, the thing that was bothersome to me that definitely no went from 7% to 19%.
Right. That is true.
What was going on there?
Well, again, it gets back to core values. If you want, we can go back to that slide.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that one versus the one earlier.
Yeah, and this is after arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely no. And then the one earlier is this one. Okay, and definitely no, and probably no. So that's your question right there.
Yeah.
Now let me go back to it.
So we explained what we were going to use the money for, and the definitely no's went up.
And the probably stayed pretty much the same. So do I know why? Can I answer that why? No. But what I can tell you is that and this is normal, by the way. People, in this case, those came from probably from the undecideds. But the issue is, no, actually, it probably came from the probable no's. And then they went to definite no's. And the reason for that is your constituent, what we learned about this is critical, is I'm really not sure. I might lean one way or the other until I see how you're going to spend the money. Well, when they saw how to spend the money, they didn't agree with it. I mean, it's sad but true. But they just flat didn't agree with it. And said, nope, that's not how I think this money ought to be spent. So the critical question in my mind is, does that 19%, I can tell you one thing, you're not going to persuade them. and you shouldn't try. You couldn't anyway. I mean, you can't advocate. But the point is, they're not going to change their mind even when they find out how you're going to spend the money. That 19% is robust. So you can count that as a no vote. And again, that 12%, I would put in a no column simply because at the polls, there isn't a probable, it's a yes or a no. And so the likelihood is that those will go where you don't want them to go, but you can't do much about that. What you need to do is just, and here's the critical part of this, but of that huge 37%, I think it was, that was undecided, the shift, 100% of the shift went to definite yes, which tells us what we need to do. We need to, and it's fair. I mean, good government is what? Inform your constituents what you want to do and what it's going to cost and how you're going to spend the money. And if you do that, it's going to shift. Your potential goes up to 61, and if you don't do that, it's sad.
So you said 100% of the undecideds go up, but then
100% of the ones that shifted, 8% didn't.
Oh, okay. So 8% still remained undecided.
Still remained undecided.
But of those that shifted, none of them went to no.
Precisely.
All of them went to
and not only to yes, but definite yes. That's huge. And by the way, the 8% is reasonable. What we expected, the reason it caught me by surprise, is I was expecting between 3 and 8% undecided. When that popped up 37%, man, I went, gosh, what's going on? That's crazy. So you have a couple of things going to happen. I mean, it's possible that and I don't know this, but your electorate maybe is going, wow, taxes. They're hearing a state talk about, like this morning I watched NBC, and what did I see? They want to tax bicycles. I mean, it's your electorate's going, okay, but it's a quality of life, safety issue. I want to keep what we have. That's what's going on. City's doing a great job. We don't want that to go south on us. We can't let our streets deteriorate. So you've got to get that message out. And if you do, they're going to come.
And so the message is status quo on cost, increased safety, and streets will deteriorate if we don't move forward, if we don't renew this.
Exactly.
And
and I wouldn't even use the language renew, although that's what it means. You could use extend to, well, you can't, it's really renew. But I would say keep the revenue stream in place.
Okay, yeah, right. No change.
No change. No increase in the tax rate. Keep the revenue stream in place. Do not let our streets begin to deteriorate, because they will if you take that revenue stream away. And they get that. They go, wow, that impacts my quality of life. And then safety.
Safety kind of second tier of those two, or is it?
Well, it's part of it. I mean, it's in order to keep our streets safe, it's urgent that we keep the revenue stream in place, because if we don't, they're going to deteriorate. And guess what? Safety is impacted.
Right. I guess
quality of life.
City manager, with that information, maybe you can address this now, or maybe you can address it later, but it sounds like we need a public information campaign about what this does. And so we need to know what the details of what that would be in order to get people to understand what it is. Which makes a whole lot of sense to me.
It does. Let me speak to that issue, because that is the core issue. That's the central point here.
Yeah.
I would not use, and I would not use the language of campaign, because that implies advocating. What you have as an electorate, Eugene has a very sophisticated electorate. I'm sure you know that. You really do, compared to other parts of, we do this all over the United States. And you have and that's what you're seeing here. You have voters that want to make an informed decision. They don't want to just go out and, they want an informed decision. And that means they look to city council and to professional staff to give them the intelligence they need, the information they need to make an informed decision. Now, the other thing we did is we looked very carefully at your opinion leaders, and they're even stronger in that sense. So an information seeker, one of the major characteristics is they're an information seeker. So they will go out and get that information, and then your mainstream, well, they also want the information, but then they'll call their opinion leader and say, well, what are you going to do and why?
Mm-hmm. So we need
you need a public affairs, a public outreach effort.
Plan to get the information out about what we're doing.
Right. So what our intent would be is if the council chooses to move forward for a bond election or election in November, what we would do is spend the time putting together that information platform, and then we can come back to council and talk about how do we put out that information so people understand what it is that they would be voting on. And so we would be doing that.
And the good news is you have, lots of cases where there's like 8 things that matter and you have to pick which 2 or 3. Well, in this case, there's no such thing. It's very clear in the data what that message strategy needs to be and rank ordered.
Actually, I had a couple of seconds. The last question was about the quiet zone. Is it because they didn't know about what it was?
No, they did, actually. Interesting. That's a good question. Quiet zone is 61% of your constituents were aware of the quiet zone. They just didn't think it was that important.
Is that what that bar, the red bar, or the bar chart on that?
Blue red.
Here, you want to see that? I didn't show you the awareness chart. Because I did the, and to respect time, I did the Reader's Digest version. But I have sitting in front of me, and you can see the quiet zone, and it'll be in your report. 61% were aware, and yet it was the least of the priorities.
So 15% was the top priority, 27% was their second priority.
Indeed. Yes, and
61% knew what it was.
Yes, and only 29% of Vision Zero knew what it was, but when they heard about it, because when you talk about what Vision Zero is, and you talk about eliminate as much as possible deaths on the street and serious injuries, life-changing injuries, that rings the bell.
Yeah.
And they care about public safety, right? Corresponds 100%.
Motherhood and apple pie.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do 2 things. We have a time check, so we have just a few more minutes to wrap this up. I have Claire and Mike in the queue, and then we'll have a motion, and we'll proceed. Okay, Claire?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you both for the report and the information. I did have a question on the survey that I sounded like a contradiction. I thought I heard that there was support for street repair, but not for addressing the backlog. Did I hear that correctly? And if so, can you explain the difference there?
Yes, the difference is this. The backlog says it's a deferred project, and we were very clear when we explained that these are projects that there just isn't funds to address. But what they're saying is, but don't let the streets get any worse than they are now. So, and they understand that means they're going to have to put money in to repair things. For example, there's not a pothole today, and 6 months from now there's a pothole, fixed pothole. They understand. You have a very sophisticated electorate. They understand, okay, it wasn't in the deferred maintenance project list, but we have this new pothole, and it's on my street. So please fix it. And I heard that I heard that today. The 2 of you were talking about, well, what about my street? That's normal.
So then I'll just, since I've got the queue here, I'll just make a couple of general comments. I am disappointed that, of course, that the quiet zone doesn't appear to have the support to be included in this bond, but I also understand the importance of keeping the bond focused on the greatest need for street repairs and improvements. So, I'm supportive of what's been presented to us. And then the other thing I'll say is I don't have benefit of the map that you all have today, but a quick review of some of the projects in my ward show that we're not really fixing large sections of those streets. In some cases, it's just 1 or 2 blocks. So while there may be good geographic distribution around the city, the significant impact of each project is probably going to be felt differently in each of the areas, depending on how much of each street is actually included in the improvement or repair. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. When does the current bond run out?
Next year. So 2018 is the final year of the current bond.
Fiscal 18. So, and most of the repair work we're talking about here, if this passes, would be done next summer, right?
Right. So if this passes, the actual construction work would be in calendar year 2019.
Okay. Is there, other than the timing we just discussed, is there any kind of downside for us doing this in May rather than November?
So I think part of the discussion had to do with what other funding requests might be on a May ballot, but also the timing is such that it does allow kind of a continuation of work, because it usually takes about 9 to 12 months to actually prepare a project for construction. So this would allow the projects to continue without a gap in the work.
Thank you. Dr. Manros, I'm going to describe a scenario for you, and I want you to just give me your answer, okay? Hypothetically, we're back at the 4861 page, okay?
85.
Campaigning, as you know, in Oregon is different than a lot of places, and with regard to what the public employees can do, they can't touch advocacy, so it's all public information. If we're going to quote campaign, that's up to an outside committee. So
Exactly.
let me ask you, if according to your go-no-goes in this scenario, you get one or two or perhaps three city councilors who speak up in favor of this bond at all, and you get a robust public information effort and a moderate campaign effort, will that succeed?
Okay, there's 2 points. You're bringing up a very sensitive point. Is it fair to say that there's some controversy going on in the community right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how I figured that out was when I looked at the data. One of the reasons people wanted to know how the money's going to be spent was they weren't really sure if they wanted to believe city council.
Right.
That's a simple fact. And so if one or two councilors came out really strong, it would depend which ones, which two, it really would. I think in all candor, you need to let the informational effort stand on its own. Focus on the need and how the money is going to be spent and the impact on the quality of life that streets will deteriorate if you let this funding mechanism go away.
That's advocacy under Oregon law, though.
Well,
right there.
Again, that's a subjective. If it is, it is. I don't believe that, but it could be. What the law says is you can't say vote yes, you can't say vote no, but you are obliged to tell your constituents in order to make an informed decision what the consequences are. The issue that makes it legal or illegal, and I'm not trying to play attorney, is if you tell both sides.
Yeah.
If you only tell one side, it's advocating. But if you tell both sides, it's informing. And it's important that you have a constituent that want to be informed.
So you think so is the answer? Probably?
I think if you, and I've already showed you why, if you look at that 61%, if you get that message out, and you're going to get some of that undecided, and you're certainly going to get some of that probable, I think you're okay. Or I wouldn't be, the first thing in the report you're going to see is it's with guarded optimism that we recommend to go. And the guarded optimism it's contingent upon creating an informed electorate. If you do that, you'll be fine. Now, there's you brought up a point a moment ago that I'd like to speak to as well, and that is, do you go in November or do you go in May?
Yeah.
I'll happily make a recommendation on that. I can't do it today. I should have come prepared. I didn't on that one because I was told it was going to be November, period. But the answer is, if you're high propensity voters, if you have greater support among the high propensity voters, then you want to go in a low turnout election.
Yeah.
And if you have more support with moderate and lower propensity voters, then you want to go in a June or a November election, a general election. And I can certainly make that recommendation, John, if you want to do that. So
one of the things that you mentioned that was interesting to me too was about the auditor
yes.
feature versus the committee of citizens.
Huge issue.
It is my opinion, just mine, I don't know if it's true or not, but that the city will have on the May ballot a question of creating a new city auditor position.
Ah.
And in November, people will be in the process of talking about that and saying, well, we'll have one in May or we'll have that election in May. I don't think these kinds of questions operate in a vacuum, and I think that to a degree our November outcome will be determined by how people are going to behave in May at the other question of an auditor. And that's why predominantly I think we ought to put the question off until May.
Also keep in mind, if you appoint an auditor, they're no longer independent. What this question was an independent auditor,
right.
Not an employee.
No, and that's what the question will be in May as an elected auditor.
Yes, sir.
I think we ought to give people the chance to have input on that. If they're going to, and I think they likely will. And in order to ask them this at the same time, because then you can make the argument that, of course, all of this will be audited, and don't trust what the city council tells you if you have an issue with that. There's an auditor, or an option to have one that can verify that.
But I need to repeat what I said. But if that auditor comes in as what amounts to staff on your management team, then he or she is not independent. What they're talking about here is an independent auditor that you bring in that has no,
Right.
nothing to grind, just, hey, it is what it is, and produces an annual report.
I really would like to have time to digest this, Mr. Manager. I know we're going to have a motion on this. I'm going to amend or move that we discuss and make a final decision at another time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to be a no vote because I need to digest this a little.
And what I would also suggest is, I assume you mean before you go on break.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you want to hit the November election, you need to make a decision before you go on break.
Thank you. I'm out of time. Well, 2 seconds.
Okay, so.
Not anymore.
Do you have something you want to say? Okay, so let's put the motion on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, and thank you.
I move to direct the city manager to bring the council resolution placing a $51.2 million GO bond measure to fix streets on the November 2017 ballot, consistent with the 2012 bond measure and the current SRRP recommendations.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. I know we have Mike. Anyone else in the room? Alan? Okay, go for it, Mike.
So as this reads, it's going to come back to us before we say, yes, put this on the November ballot. Is that correct?
Bring back a resolution.
Yes, it's a direction that, to prepare.
For an action item at some Monday night twixt here and break, right?
Yes.
No, I think the resolution would come back after the break.
No.
It would come back before the break.
Resolution
Right.
is coming back on July 24th.
I will, just from the standpoint of starting that discussion, I will move to amend instead of November 2017 to say May of 2018. It's quiet in here.
We need a second on that.
Okay.
I think you've got support for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Any other, oh, Alan, here you go.
So the deadline for the November 2017 ballot means we have to get stuff done before we go on break, which is the 28th. So we're planning to come back on the 24th. At that point, we can get this information, Dr. Manos's detailed study, and also more information about November or May. And so that decision can actually be deferred as well. But the May 18 deadline isn't until February?
February.
Yeah. So can we get that information by the 24th as part of
Please.
that packet?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm trying to understand make sure I understand the information that all that you're looking for.
His recommendation about which one to go for, and also the detailed report.
We can provide both of those. I think there's also information about what other agencies and jurisdictions are planning on going, not only in May, but could be that following November, and what the council may or may not choose to do with things like the Parks and Recreation System Plan, which is also sort of in your queue. And so all of those sort of line up, so we can review that again with the council at that time.
Yeah, what else is on the ballot is an important piece of information as well. Yeah, so if we can get that by the 24th, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other comments in the queue? Ready for a vote? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Council, Claire?
Yes, I vote yes.
8. Okay, 8 in favor. Thank you. It passes. Thank you very much for bringing your expertise to this deliberation. Incredibly helpful. Thank you very much. And we are right on. We have 30 minutes to talk about the chronic nuisance code.
Come on up. Just get started whenever you're ready.
started. So I'm Rochelle Nicholas, Inspection Services Manager with the Planning Department, and I'm here with Mark Tritt, who is our lead code compliance inspector. I just want to take a quick minute just to remind everyone kind of how we got here so that the presentation will make sense. If you'll recall, this actually started way back with a conversation about on-site property management, with the focus being mostly in the university area. However, out of that conversation, the research kind of showed that on-site property management maybe wasn't the solution to the issues that were happening at that time, which were more social issues, but that a lot of those issues were occurring in single-family dwellings and kind of all over the city. And so out of that, we had a conversation about the challenges that emergency personnel and code compliances had in making contact when there was issues with responsible parties and owners. And so City Council recommended that we move forward and adopt a local contact code, which was put into the administrative rules in the rental housing program. And then the conversation around livability has continued, most recently with the focus of abandoned properties and foreclosed properties being kind of the issue at this moment. But when we were here this last time for the quick 10-minute roundtable council session that we had, more conversation happened not only around abandoned and foreclosed properties, but also on how code compliance worked generally, how we do enforcement, and other topics came up at that time. So we thought we would just take a really quick minute to do a fast presentation on general overview of code compliance, and with the primary focus being on abandoned and foreclosed properties and what other jurisdictions are doing, and what could come from that as far as a recommendation. So if it's okay, we'll get started on the presentation.
Our mission is to preserve and improve the public's safety, health, welfare, and environment by enforcing regulations that preserve and protect neighborhoods. Livability in residential neighborhoods has continued to be a subject of concern throughout Eugene. Compliance with local codes can be an important part of protecting the safety and health of occupants and visitors, and maintain the appearance and functionality of a neighborhood. During the last several years, work on neighborhood livability initiatives has resulted in a number of new programs and administrative rules, including the Unruly Gathering or Social Host Ordinance, which was adopted in early 2013 and holds both occupants and owners accountable for neighborhood impacts related to excessively loud or disruptive gatherings. EPD's Rental Property Program, which alerts owners and managers who have registered a property address when an EPD call for service is initiated. The U of O extended the Student Code of Conduct for students who reside off campus as well as on. The U of O created an alcohol education program. In partnership, the city and the university developed the Thunder Can campaign to educate residents on when garbage and recycling containers should be taken to and removed from the curb. And lastly, the city added a requirement that rental owners designate a local contact who resides within 75 miles of Eugene when the owner or manager does not. The contact information allows the city to reach a responsible party more quickly. Additionally, the city has a number of codes in place to protect public health, safety, and welfare as it relates to use of private property. The types of issues we respond to are diverse and can vary by neighborhood. This slide provides just a few examples of the type of issues found in the city's existing code. These codes have become increasingly important to maintaining a high quality of life as Eugene's population grows and densities increase. In 2016, staff responded to approximately 1,600 complaints. This chart provides a summary of the types and volume of complaints by category, and also the diverse number of issues addressed by the code compliance team. Examples of common complaints with direct neighborhood impacts include accumulation of garbage, junk, and debris, garbage and recycling can placement, and crowing roosters, to name a few. Permit-related issues can range from the simple installation of a hot water tank or a sign without a permit to more complex construction projects, including garage conversions to living space or commercial tenant infill. Hoarding falls into the building safety category when hoarded materials are inside a dwelling due to egress and fire safety hazards, and in the nuisance category when the accumulation is stored outside. Vacant or abandoned properties, transient camping, and hoarding have an overall low percentage of complaints, yet consume large amounts of staff time with case management. This map shows the density of complaints by neighborhood, with the dark blue areas being the highest. There are a lower number of complaints in the industrial areas. Additionally, the areas outside the urban growth boundary may be slightly lower, as the city only enforces zoning and building code in the UGB. All nuisance violations are handled by Lane County. We respond to community and neighborhood concerns with a complaint-based system. Complaints can be submitted by phone, in person, online, or in writing. The complainant's information is kept confidential. I'm going to provide a brief case study to illustrate how the code compliance team handles a complaint. We received a complaint about a house that has been abandoned. There may be squatters, and there's garbage, junk, and debris in the yard. Staff do research in the office to determine the ownership and current status of the property. If staff are unable to locate an owner or a responsible party, they conduct a site visit. In this case, staff determined that the house was in the foreclosure process, and we were unable to make contact with the responsible party. The information received from the complainant is confirmed by a site visit. During the inspection, staff determined that there are unsafe conditions: an open vacant structure, evidence of transient trespass, and exposed electrical wiring. The property was posted for abatement. After the site was abated and the building secured, we continued to monitor the property and respond to recurring violations, such as graffiti abatement. This is another example of a property that was boarded due to the conditions inside. In this case, we have code language that allows us to address the debris and trash that you can see in the picture on the left. There is no code authority to address the black tarp cover as seen in the middle picture, which depicts the current condition at the site. The graffiti in the alley has also been abated to the extent defined by the code. The city responds to a number of concerns regarding open and vacant or dangerous buildings. The codes in place focus on health and safety. If a structure is open and vacant or is dangerous to occupants, the city requires an owner to secure the structure and remove anything that would present a risk to health or safety. This can mean that a structure gets boarded either by the owner or the city and may remain in that condition for an extended period of time. The owner is responsible to keep the property free of garbage, obnoxious vegetation, and other nuisances. The city currently does not have code language to address aesthetics or the need for ongoing maintenance of a structure unless it becomes dangerous. To help inform the discussion on abandoned properties, staff researched some other Oregon communities and the codes they use. As you can see, the types of codes and what they address varies by community. Some communities have a few additional tools to help them reach compliance. For example, many communities have housing maintenance codes that address exterior appearance, including limiting the use of tarps on roofs or walls. The cities of Corvallis, Portland, and Gresham each have codes that address neighborhood concerns regarding deteriorated exteriors and abandoned buildings. In 2016, Corvallis adopted the Corvallis Livability Code, which is modeled on the International Property Maintenance Code, similar to what Gresham uses, as do many other communities in other states. Code examples from these jurisdictions are included in your packet today. Thank you for your time and interest.
Oh, that was great. Thank you very much. I have Betty in the queue, Chris in the queue. Anybody else? Alan?
I'd like to be in the queue, please, Mayor.
Okay, got it. All right, Betty. Oh, Greg.
Thank you, and I think we're going to need another session on this since we started so late. There are many complaints in my ward, and it's not it's not a terribly poor, uniformly poor at least ward. Some of them are in very high-priced neighborhoods. There are complaints about buildings that have been abandoned, buildings that have been empty for years and years, and no one will do anything about it. They say they've called the city. But my complaints mostly are about nuisance buildings. Well, that's one thing. And along with that, the vegetation in the summertime, which is a fire danger. So there's the worry about fire, which is a really legitimate worry, I think. And about noise. And noise is a nuisance too. I just got a new one everybody got the ones about fireworks recently and about concerts in Alton Baker, but I just got a complaint about a movie in Tugman Park that was audible to all the neighbors. And in some cases, I think maybe we need more enforcement. I noticed that from this, it isn't clear to me which city has, because of the continuation of the pages aren't numbered, but a monthly fee is charged if there isn't. I think that was probably Salem. You know?
Salem does have a registration fee for
a monthly fee if they don't remedy the situation.
Some jurisdictions have registration requirements for abandoned and vacant properties where they have to actually register their property and pay a monthly fee.
And this one says if it remains derelict, it's not clear to me where that's continued from, but if it remains derelict, there's a monthly fee too. But I know that some cities not only respond to complaints about derelict properties, but in the process, if they see others nearby or that they just pass by, they also have the option of doing something about those. But there are places where they say that the owner may come back and do a little work once every year, but the house remains empty. And I think there are ways that something can be done about that. Some kind of fee or something. Maybe that we need more compliance, but I think we probably need more ordinances too. We need something about the tarps, for example, and that's a complaint I've gotten. And on the other hand, for very minor things, sometimes there's enforcement. Once my ivy at my house, this is about 25 years ago, had grown over the curb a little bit, and I got this sign warning me that something would happen if I didn't get that done within so many days. And that was something that wasn't really doing any harm, but things that are really dangerous, people say they can't get any response. And so I don't know if that's a shortage of workers, a shortage of penalties, or what. But I would really like some examples of things we can do, both about increasing the things that are illegal, such as tarps over buildings and things, and how we can get penalties that will cause people to abide by the laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. I would agree with Betty. This is something that's going to need another work session. And I think because this is such a critically important issue, I believe this is how the citizens of Eugene judge their city in many, many respects. Their interface with the city in these areas is how they decide whether or not they're getting service from their city. To use a metaphor, if they were renters and the city were the landlord and they had a problem in their apartment and they called the landlord and the landlord said, well, you know, I'll get around to it, or I won't get there, or they don't send anybody at all, or they just write it down, that tenant would be very upset. And they've actually created laws to protect tenants from landlords who don't respond to those kinds of complaints. And I realize that for many people, these may be minor complaints, but for them, these are major complaints. And that's based on the fact I get these calls. We all get these calls. And these people take this as something important. I don't have a lot of interaction with murder. I don't have a lot of interaction with robbery, but I do have a lot of interaction with every single thing on this chart, and so do the people in Eugene. And if we're not able to respond effectively through a lack of resources or a lack of are setting the policy for it, then we're going to be judged on this. And this was relevant to the previous conversation we had. Why should I support a landlord who doesn't respond to my complaints when I complain? So this is important that we address this, and I'm glad you've brought this up, and I'm really appreciating this table that you've brought. So how do we begin to address it? And I think that's why we need to start systematically working through how we can be more effective at addressing exactly these kinds of complaints. They're not big, they're not sexy, but nevertheless, I think to a great degree, our performance as a city council and as a city is based on these very things. When I used to do surveys years and years and years ago for metropolitan communities, these were the things that came up as being the biggest nuisances and biggest concerns about city government. So, for example, on what other communities have done, I say we need to move as quickly as we can on some sort of a housing maintenance kind of code adaptation. Everybody else has one except Brownsville and Eugene, and we need to figure out how we can begin to get at it. I think the tarp across a building is atrocious, and we don't have a code to deal with that. And I think we can help you with that. And what I'm saying is I'm not trying to blame the city and say somehow the city staff has fallen down. You do what we tell you to do, and we provide that guidance. And I think what we need to do as a city council is begin to recognize how important this is and give you the direction that you need and the money and resources to make this much more effective.
Alan?
I agree with what Chris said. Thanks for the info. Need time to digest this. This is going to come back, and this is just a primer on it. On that one slide that had the complaint button on the computer, where do I get a complaint button for my computer?
They sold them right next to the easy buttons.
The easy buttons. So what happens after a notice to abate the nuisance, and who pays for that? I think the poster child for that is the property that's actually in here on 7th at Monroe next to the Fisherman's Market. So that's been there for years, and it seems like we don't have any tools to do anything about it. And that's predominantly what I'm interested in. I mean, we have an abandoned property code, but apparently it doesn't do very much. So that was one of the areas I really want to look at. Can you talk about that particular case? And that's probably very illustrative.
Sure. So once we post a property for abatement, it allows the owner 10 days to correct any issues themselves. That particular property was actually posted as dangerous because of the inside was so poorly maintained. And so we, the city, immediately boarded that house. The cost of an abatement, should the city have to do it, is placed as a lien against the property. And at some point we will collect the money that we've put into that property. And so, yeah, we're at a point where we're pretty limited on what we can do now, other than just keeping up with graffiti and keeping the garbage picked up and the owner, has continued to maintain it periodically at this point.
Yeah, so a property where they just board it up, don't do anything to it, it just keeps deteriorating, very, very, very minimal amount of maintenance or cleanup, and the whole neighborhood thinks it's an eyesore, including everybody who drives by it on our main street, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's one of the predominant issues that I want to address here. I'm really interested in looking at that abandoned buildings, but also the house maintenance, and especially the tarps and the aesthetics issues. I know there's a lot of people that complain about that in terms of this house in particular is so out of the norm of the neighborhood. It's just basically they don't care, or they're not there, or it's an out of state landlord or something like that, and that's one of the issues I'd like to try to get at as well. On the complaint wheel, so the first. The second, third, and fourth one, debris, junk, and garbage, is all are all pretty much the same to me. Maybe you can distinguish them, and why do we distinguish them?
So garbage is obvious. That's raw garbage. And then junk and debris is kind of just miscellaneous construction material, furniture,
Mattresses in June
Mattresses.
after school lets out.
Right, exactly.
And debris is, how's that different from, that's just,
Debris is more, we have a lot of folks that dump their tree leaves, tree trimmings, things like that, to where they become rodent harborage and things. And so that's kind of lumped a little bit differently than the furniture.
yeah. So that's a full third, it's 33% of our complaints. What is the zoning standards one?
Zoning standards includes things like setbacks for vehicles and structures, commercial use in a residential zone, too many dwellings, too many occupants, so more than 5 occupants in a dwelling that are unrelated, and fence violations.
And that's distinguished from work without a permit. Work without a permit, I assume, is people are building their garage into a, and may or may not know what they're doing, and especially in electrical, could potentially create a fire hazard, things, or safety hazard, and then burn down their neighbor's house. That actually happened to me. So, okay, that's interesting. So this is a lot of stuff to digest. What are we planning to do when we come back?
What I would suggest is a couple of things. A couple of you mentioned it. It feels like there has to be a policy agreement from the council if you want to shift sort of the policy emphasis. And so there's a couple of things that I start to hear. One is, as you know, we're complaint driven, which is different than being proactive. It's a whole different level of engagement, and that may or may not be something we want to do. So that's a policy type of discussion. I think there's the policy discussion around just forgot what it was, but there's a yeah, no, there's a couple. Yeah, so I think the policy piece would be helpful for the council to say this is the policy, and then we sort of move forward on that.
How far we want to go with.
Yeah, how far you want to go to actually implement that policy, right. And then we can provide that. So I think part of it's policy, part of it we can flesh out a couple of the, housing maintenance, for example, and some of those kinds of things we can actually flesh out a little bit more as well.
Okay. Claire?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I'll try to keep my comments brief. I have a couple of questions. I was going to bring up that building on 7th since I pass by it every single day, and it just looks terrible. And I have to say, I'm not sure it's totally vacant, as I've seen someone there recently who appears to be living there. So you may want to look at that again. And I'm wondering about bank-owned properties that are allowed to become a nuisance. What is our enforcement process there, and can it be ramped up?
So we handle bank properties the same way. We give them a notice, require them to maintain the properties within what code authority we do have. We issue penalties. They have to pay them just like any property owner. Sorry, I forgot your second question. Oh, can we ramp it up? We certainly can. I think it's kind of in line with what John was saying of taking a harder approach, which hasn't been our approach. And so we certainly can do that.
So, and then I just had a suggestion on the council information. The attachment A is labeled abandoned or foreclosed properties, which made me think it was going to be a list of such properties rather than a list of examples of codes. So just a little bit more clarity in the packet would be great. I'm also curious in terms of fire danger, whether it's because of dangerous vegetation or dangerous conditions for inhabitants, when or if we get the fire department involved in that kind of enforcement.
So there's a couple different types of vegetation, and Public Works is responsible for any type of fire safety vegetation, and they typically get involved. I'm not sure about fire's response, to be honest. We do limited vegetation on private property, but Public Works takes the majority of that.
Thanks. And then to the question of, what we do next, I think one thing that would be helpful for council might be an analysis or a list of what kind of complaints are generally received, a cataloging of those, so we could identify where we might strengthen our code in addition to the things we've discussed today. I do think we need to come up with a more robust response to these issues. I agree with what Chris said about that. I think our current staff does an excellent job with the limited resources they have, but I think, we might consider adding some FTE to the department and then work on creating stronger policies from council to address the problems that the community is reporting to us and see on a daily basis. Thank you.
All right. Greg?
Well, just looking at the information that we have in front of us here and noting that my ward in my area happens to have the darkest blue color of anything in the city, and noting that, dangerous buildings happens to be one of our, just anecdotally from, just kind of what calls that I receive, plus what I had at the end of my street for 2.5 years with a building, with a house that was being occupied by people who were engaged in some highly dangerous illegal activity. And the only way that it seemed that we were able to, rectify the situation was going through the county and noting that the property owner in that particular case didn't pay their taxes for 4 years, was the only way that it seemed that we could alleviate that particular situation. And there were drug dealers in that place and all kinds of debris in the backyard, including old tires. And it was a horrendous situation. But these situations are, throughout my area. And I people are incredibly frustrated when they call in and doesn't seem to be anything that we can do about it. I think that we have a real disconnect between policy and enforcement. And I don't know what to do about enforcement. How can we enforce what we already have out there on the books? And how can we really hold accountable property owners who are not dealing with the situations that are already going on with their own properties? And then the other thing is the camping situations that we have. Because a lot of what the complaints that I see are happening, and I would really like to see what we can do to really kind of, tease out what's happening in my area, because the pie chart doesn't really give me a sense of what the level of, what are those complaints happening in my area. It's giving me a citywide snapshot, but giving a more deeper look into what's happening in the bluest part of Eugene would be really helpful for me.
I just want to say it is 1:30. I have 3 more people in the queue. Do you want to extend?
Move to extend 10 minutes.
Second.
All right. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Claire?
Sure. Yes.
8. Okay, good. All right. So next in the queue is Emily.
Thank you. I have a concern about the TARP concern. My house had a leaky roof in September, and to get a home equity loan and in the queue for a roof company, it was end of January before my roof was repaired. Guess what? I had to have a blue tarp on my roof. It was ugly. What other alternative was there? Is there a time limit for tarps? 6 months, I think, is a minimum. I know it's a long time, but I couldn't have buckets in my living room. Both of the examples that were given are in Ward 1. I walk past that brown house. I'd like you to know there's mattresses on the front porch right now. It's hideously ugly, but I don't get complaints about that. I get complaints about Tom's Tea House on 7th Street like crazy. And, you know, it's hideously ugly. It's dangerous. I believe there's drug dealing going on. A third house in my ward used to be my house across from Monroe Park, and the following owner went into foreclosure and nobody knew where the loan was. So they did have abatement. The house was boarded up. It was hideous. It broke my heart. And I was told that Aryan gangs with major heroin dealing had moved in and really damaged the inside of the house. I wonder, with our great amount of homeless people, if we could do something to move these houses in foreclosure into being actual residents again. There's a house on Washington on 10th, a small one, changed owners. All of the stuff inside is along the edge of the house. It's really, really ugly, and now it's covered in blue tarps, and it's rotting. I imagine animals are living in it. There used to be enforcement of the tall grass policy, which I think is also a fire danger, possibly more than fireworks, and you put the two together and we've got a real danger. It stopped being enforced, I heard, because of money, so it seemed like there was a rule for it, but we couldn't support it. I'm surprised you can't have more than 5 unrelated people living in a house. What do you do about 6 college kids renting a house together? That seems like a problem, because I know it happens. I have a large house and I've had to rent rooms, and at one point I had 6 unrelated people living there, you know. Are you going to come get me? The empty houses are a really big problem for the squats, the destruction of the property, and the drug situation, which I believe is critical and really hurting other areas we're concerned about.
Okay, Jennifer.
Thank you. I just want to say I really agree with what Councilor Evans said. If we need to enforce what we already have first, and if that means more employees or what, if we can get some information on that, because you can have all the ordinances you want if you're not doing anything about it. We had some houses in my area that fall in this, and so I have a question. Once you get a complaint about a property, what's the timeline that people can expect for something to start happening?
So it depends. We prioritize depending on what the complaint is. We try to get out on a first site visit within 10 days.
Okay. And then if it's something where it's been abandoned, but there's obviously, people using the facility, what kind of timeline till where next step?
So if it's been abandoned and we know it's been abandoned, oftentimes the city will go ahead and board it up and place a lien on the property just for protection, safety protection. But if it's just abandoned but secured and has other concerns, other violations, we will issue a notice and allow them owner, bank, whatever the situation, allow them 10 days to correct those issues.
Nice. And what if there is no owner? How long does it take the city to get to it?
To abate it, usually we're out there. We have a contractor that does it, so we're usually out there within the week.
Oh,
okay, Mike, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. There's about 2 or 3 of these that seem like they're obviously about abandoned buildings. Occupancy, camping. Maybe there's 1 or 2 others there where it seems like the complaint itself stems from the fact that nobody lives there. Everything else seems to me to be about how people are using their property inappropriately according to the complaint. What would you say is the percentage of complaints you get in total about abandoned properties? As a percent of all your complaints, how many about abandoned?
I would say 10 to 15%, but they're also the most time consuming.
Right. So 85, 90% is about how somebody who's living there is using this space there. And I see a host of these here, especially and I would think the big three that are at the top here are about just stuff that looks horrible and, you know, they may be dangerous from the junk sitting there. Noise, odor, you know, on and on. So I want to use Betty's example for a minute here and say there's a movie going on at Tugman Park, and the complaint is about noise. Or maybe that's a good or a bad example to use in this case. But let's say there's a noise complaint at 9:30 and it's audible inside somebody else's house. I chose that time on purpose. What would your response be?
So noise such as that is EPD response. So that's under their jurisdiction. However, there's other code that should it become a continuous problem, we will issue a notice to correct addressing the noise that happens after hours.
That's what I was getting at. So it has to be like 10 o'clock, right?
After 10 o'clock, right. Or sometimes if the noise levels are just too high consistently.
And that's what I wanted to get to. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but that's what I wanted to get to. Would you say you get what percentage of complaints that don't violate code, but the person who's complaining thinks they should?
Oh, God. We get a fair number. It's not huge. I'm guessing most of those complaints go to Eugene Police.
So are these sustained percentages here, or are these all complaints, even the ones that aren't justified?
Oh, most of what comes into us and these noise, the noise that show up on here can be things like construction noise.
In the daytime?
No, it's usually after hours. So we have a lot of contractors that'll start work at like 6:30 because they need to pour concrete. And that happens consistently
so
on
these complaints are all represent all complaints that were in violation of code.
Not necessarily, but majority of them. But noise complaints, so there's separate noise complaints. We don't usually get the noise complaints like party complaints and things like that. Those go to EPD. Our noise complaints are very different.
Right. And that's why I was saying, and maybe the Tugman Park was not a good example. But, well, here's what I'm trying to get to. You know, what offends one person may not cross the line of violation of code. What I think, I mean, I don't think anybody should be allowed to paint a house yellow, for crying out loud, you know. But maybe some people really like that. So how do we best, you know, parse that issue in, especially in a community like Eugene? How would you advise that we deal with that, or is that a problem at all? I mean, are there clear, quote, problematic issues that take place?
I think our code is I mean, it's either garbage or it's not garbage. There's either a mattress in the front lawn or there's not. It's pretty.
With these three?
What I would say too is we really look at health and safety issues, which is different than an aesthetic issue. And so health and safety, you can generally be much more objective about. If you have a lot of weeds and it's a breeding ground for something, sure, you can cut the weeds. If somebody has a yellow house and people don't like yellow houses, that's an aesthetic issue, which is much harder to, well, you can enforce it, but it's much harder to create a policy around an aesthetic issue.
Tarp's an aesthetic issue?
I don't know. I think that, so what I think you're, I'll take that as rhetorical at the moment, but I think as we come back to the council talking about policies, I do think there is that, how far into an aesthetic policy do you want to move?
Most of what we have here is dealing with how people live in the house they're in. It's not as much, as you said, about abandoned properties. It's about us being able to get along with one another and how we live. So I think that should color our conversation.
Okay, we have 30 seconds, and actually, I do want to say something.
Okay.
If you have a question.
I just wanted to point out February 2015 packet on chronic nuisances, so we've been dealing with a long time without a resolution. The TARP rules, the ones I saw that had extensions for weather, so there's ways to, I think, get around that if we looked into that. And then I thought the tall grass enforcement policy was in place, but it does take quite a bit. You have to get like 3 notices, and then the city goes out and does it if they don't do it.
So it's Public Works does it. Maybe Catherine has more information.
There was a recent minor code change to that within the last year. And to tweak some of them, there were some mandatory deadlines that were built in that were having some enforcement issues because of staffing. I can pull that. There was an AIS, there was a discussion at council. And to get that information of where it landed and that good stuff.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for all of this, and I just want to, it seems to me that there is a common sense sort of way of prioritizing these, that we know that the Tom's Tea House is severe and that the tarp that's on a house because it's got a leaky roof and it takes a while is not as severe. And it seems to me that that would be our directive ultimately, to say of some of these things that we're not taking care of, can't we identify what that priority checklist is, and so that we have more reinforcement on those more severe ones. And there's a sort of, I'm sure you all could write immediately, sort of list the tools that you would like to have in order to deal with some of those more severe things. So that seems to me a pathway we can follow pretty in a straightforward way. So with that, thank you all for your patience and endurance. Thank you very much for that report, and we are adjourned.